Hello everyone. Unfortunately, I cannot be with you in person today given that I'm not allowed to travel abroad until my application for American asylum has been fully processed. Migration is as old as life itself, but it remains one of the most challenging and contentious issues of our current generation. The way we respond to the challenges will define our broader goal of continuous improvement in our collective civilization. Or if we fail, we'll cast yet another deep stain that will be as difficult to eradicate as the impact of colonialism and slavery. In 2015, I was working as a freelancer for Thomson Reuters Foundation, finding stories from Uganda, and a colleague contacted me regarding an interview she had conducted in southern Uganda. She wanted me to help translate the interview about 14,000 villagers that were being evicted from their land. The story was the Ugandan government had leased 8,000 hectares of land to a Norwegian timber company, and many villagers complained they no longer had access to the land they were born on or had lived for so many years. What struck me as I was translating was a conversation implicating the direct involvement of Yoweri Museveni, the Ugandan president, in this land grab from his people. He had written a letter promising to compensate the villagers with 500 hectares, but even this small offer was not forthcoming. The Bukaleba villagers are among millions of Africans facing an uncertain future across the continent, where an estimated 50 million hectares of land is being leased out to foreign entities. I was familiar about these large corporations leasing large chunks of land and taking away, evicting thousands of our people, but I always thought it was in other African countries. Now, this story of Bukaleba at home affected me profoundly, and I understood how this ongoing land grab had mushroomed throughout our beloved continent. Throughout Africa, dictators have rushed in to introduce land reforms that take away the ownership of land from their people. Land is the only property asset that most African families can claim legitimately in their possession. By taking away this vital foundation of property, many families across the continent are unilaterally displaced. They have no option but for many of them to go and seek employment and economic options in Europe, United States, and even the Middle East. And then one realizes it was not land alone that was being stolen away from Africans. For more than 30 years of his rule, President Museveni has been handing over the country's wealth to foreigners in exchange for guns and a de facto approval to rule for life. All of these unfortunate decisions have had far-reaching effects, including unprecedented levels of unemployment to his people. Meanwhile, Museveni has earned unjustifiably a reputation as a reformer and a man the West could do business with in the Western media. Did Ugandans just give up and go to Europe? No. They have definitely tried to fight back. But regrettably, their efforts have been frustrated not only by Museveni's invisibility, but also the West's unwavering support for his regime. Elections have been reached despite European poll monitors describing them as free and fair. Peaceful protests have been quelled by a military that is trained and funded by United Kingdom and the United States. The most bitter irony is the completely unbalanced nature of the seemingly bilateral relationship. Today, migrants are not welcome in most Western countries. In Germany this year, there were protests against the government's decision to allow more refugees cross the border. Certainly, one whose right to protest is a universal and justified one, but I must also highlight that these protests are not based on realistic circumstances. Instead, they are motivated by manufactured fears that foreigners, refugees, take away jobs from migrants. Politicians blame domestic economic wars on migrants taking away jobs. Politicians with strong nationalistic profiles articulate these fears, and the corporatized media transmits them, even if inadvertently, in their coverage. The messages predominate despite facts and figures that state that these fears are unfounded. In September, NBC News reported that the Trump administration repeatedly exaggerates the potential threat posed by refugees. Likewise, for jobs, the corporations that were underpaying and impoverishing Western citizens were the same corporations that were plundering African wealth. One might expect that workers, whether citizens or migrants, would find a common ground to collaborate and improve their rights and wage conditions at their workplaces. However, I must also highlight I and my peers are grateful to the many European and Americans who have opened up their homes, businesses, and communities to the migrants. It is these examples that give us hope. Thank you.